All right, coming in at number 15, a playoff team from last year, TCU. I've got TCU coming in at number 15 on my way too early post-National Signing Day top 25. We all know the TCU story from last year, right? Losing every game at halftime, come back winning the second half. Max Duggan, Heisman finalist, quarterback, Sonny Dykes, second year there. Amazing job. Undefeated regular season. Lose the Big 12 title game to Kansas State. Get into the playoffs where everyone expected them to get blown out in the first round by Michigan. And what did they do? They beat Michigan. The blowout came 10 days later in the national title game when Georgia humiliated them 65-7. But TCU did make the playoffs last year. They get 12 starters back from that team, but no Max Duggan. He's gone. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. If you're a TCU fan, how big of a believer are you in Sonny Dykes and his decision-making, coaching ability, personnel decisions, whatever? Because he looked you dead in your face last year at the beginning of the season and told you that Max Duggan was not the best quarterback on your team. That's why he didn't start last year at quarterback. Chandler Morris actually got the start at quarterback for TCU last year in game 1 and got hurt. That's how we got the Max Duggan story. Max Duggan didn't go through the offseason and win the starting quarterback job and start from day one. No, it was Chandler Morris. So yeah, it sucks that Max Duggan is gone, but Chandler Morris is back. The guy that Sonny Dykes told you was better than Max Duggan, at least heading into the season. Now, does that mean he's going to have a season like what Max Duggan had last year? No. And here's my problem with TCU. I've got a couple of, I don't know if problem is the right word. I have some hesitations when it comes to putting TCU any higher than where I have them right now in the preseason, which is what, number 15. Okay? I want to give TCU the respect they deserve. It's not easy to make a 14 playoff. Not only did they make a 14 playoff, they did it by going 12-1 in the regular season, an undefeated regular season, an undefeated Power 5 regular season. It's just not easy to do. Go back and count how many teams have had an undefeated regular season in the last 10 years in the Power 5. It ain't very many. So this idea that TCU didn't deserve to be in the playoffs, no, I don't buy into any of that at all. Here's where my hesitations come in. The number of times, we talked about it all year. Oh, don't count TCU out at halftime. They might be losing by 7. They might be losing by 10. Hell, they might even be losing by 17 in the third quarter. You know they're going to find a way to come back and win. And everybody kept saying the same thing. It's going to catch up with them. It's going to catch up with them. It's going to catch up with them. And it never did. Really, right? They kept finding ways to win. Can they really do that a second year in a row? TCU's not an Ohio State, Bama, Georgia, Clemson, Oklahoma. You look at some of these other teams that have made the playoffs several times. They blow the majority of people they play out. They just completely destroy them. And then maybe they have one or two sort of difficult games a season, right? That's not the case with TCU. I don't want to use the term lucky, but it was fairly remarkable that they kept winning the games the way they kept winning them. I don't know if that's something that's repeatable year over year. There's another team we're going to talk about in the top 10 who did something last year that I also don't think is repeatable, and I'm going to punish them in my ranking for that as well. Could TCU win the Big 12 in 2023? Of course they could. Sonny Dykes is one of the best coaches in that league. And yeah, they lose Max Duggan, but they get 12 starters back. Sonny Dykes at QB. The quarterback that Sonny Dykes told you was better than Max Duggan, Chandler Morris, is there. They got to replace the wide receiver too, Quentin Johnston or whatever that's off to the NFL. But the Big 12 is wide open. If you're one of the best 4 or 5 teams in the Big 12, you've got a chance to win it. And that includes, in my opinion, TCU. But the other thing is the Max Duggan factor. Max Duggan just had that it factor. It was just something about Max Duggan. He never thought they were going to lose. It didn't matter they were down. If it was 3rd and 6, Max Duggan was going to run for 7 yards. You just knew it. You didn't have a question. There was not a doubt in my mind. Every TCU game I watched in the 3rd and 4th quarter, if it was 3rd and whatever, and Max Duggan took off running, I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt he was going to get the first down plus 1 yard. There was just something in him. And no matter how good Chandler Morris may be, it's hard for me to imagine he's going to have that. Whatever that is, that it, you can't really define it. You just kind of watch Max Duggan play and he just has it. Whatever it is, he had it. So the combination of all the comebacks they had and sort of the Max Duggan factor, I don't know if that's repeatable for TCU in 2023. Again, they're not a team that recruits in the top 10 every single year. So, it's not a team that's just loaded and backfilled with elite talent. It sort of takes that special season like they had last year to get a team like TCU into the playoffs. I just don't think that's repeatable. That's why I've got them at 15. But yeah, they could win the Big 12. There's no question about it. It's not an insult to TCU. Number 14, another ACC team. Up and down, mixed feelings here about the Tater Man. I've got some serious question marks about Dabo Swinney going forward and the way he is viewing modern college football, the way he's reacting to the changes in modern college football. I've got serious questions about that. I've got serious questions about their ability to replace that defensive front. Again, Clemson has been on a remarkable run in the ACC. They're not a team that consistently recruits in the top 5 or 10. You can go back and check the rankings. Not saying that to tell you they're untalented and they're not TCU. I mean, they're way more talented than TCU. But look at what they're losing from that defensive front, which is clearly the strength of that team last year. I don't know that can be replaced defensively. The offense is going to have to take a huge step forward. Huge. I get it, okay? Was Clemson a terrible team the last 2 years? No, they were not terrible. They double-digit wins both seasons. They were not terrible. But they're not, Clemson's not being judged against your average college football team. Clemson is being judged against 2015 to 2020 when they were an elite college football program, one of the best in the country year in and year out. That's what they're being judged against. And they're not that right now. They're not. They are some amount of steps behind that right now. That's just a fact. Their defense has carried in the last couple of years because the offense has been horrendous under DJ the ukulele the last 2 years. It's just been horrible. The defense has been carrying Clemson. They lose a lot of talent off of that defense this year to the NFL. The offense is going to have to take a huge step forward in 2023 just for Clemson to tread water, which is the 10-11 win mark. Forget making the playoffs. They're going to have to play a lot better just for Clemson to tread water this season and win the 10-11 games and compete for an ACC title. Can they do that? Yes, they can. Their offense has been so bad the last 2 years that it's completely within the realm of possibility that their offense takes a big step forward in 2023. Couple of reasons why. Ukulele gone, Cade Klubnik in. Looked good at times, looked bad at times. Didn't play well in the bowl game against Tennessee, one of the worst defenses in the country. So we'll see. But he'll have a whole offseason to prepare as the start of this year. And gone is nepotism Brandon Streeter, Clemson's OC from last year, that never should have been given the job, but he was. Again, getting back to issues with Dabo Swinney, he never should have been given that job. He's gone. They bring in probably the best coordinator hire so far in the offseason, Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator from TCU. Lincoln Riley's younger brother, considered an offensive mastermind. We'll see what he can do with the talent available at Clemson. Pretty good offense for TCU last year. He's going to have a lot more talent to work with on the Clemson roster than he is the TCU roster. So we'll see what kind of offense Clemson can put out on the field. Of course, a lot of that's going to depend on how well Cade Klubnik plays. They've got Will Shipley, who I think is the best player on their team at running back. One of the best players in college football. Doesn't really get enough credit either, I don't think, for whatever reason. But Will Shipley's really, really good. But I've got legitimate questions about Clemson, which is why I don't have them in the top 10. Their defense could fall off a little bit this season. We'll see. I do expect the offense to take some steps forward, though. So the real question is, can the offense move up enough to make up for whatever fall off they have defensively? Probably. Let's be real. It also benefits them that they're in the ACC, like I mentioned earlier, outside of Florida State and possibly North Carolina. Who else is there in the ACC that gives you any pause at all? Nobody. I've got the Taters at 14. Number 13. I'm getting to the point with this team where every single year I'm just going to put them at 13 and I'm going to leave them there all year long. Never going to move them no matter what they do. They're one of the most consistent teams in all of college football. Utah. I've got them coming in at number 13. Another good year last year for Utah. They won the Pac-12 for the second year in a row. They then also went on to lose their bowl game for the second year in a row. They are by no means an elite team, Utah. They're a really, really good team. Let's not forget, they lost to Florida last year. You know how bad you have to be to lose to 2022 Florida? That's not a good look. They do get Cam Rising back. They lose Kincaid, one of the best tight ends in the country, but they keep Kyle Whittingham. Again, you talk about coaches that do more with less, coaches to get the absolute most out of the available talent they have. You're talking about Kyle Whittingham at Utah. Here's my questions about Utah, not just this season, but going forward. I found myself a lot last season and now into this offseason, and it's going to continue this year, when talking about the Pac-12, saying basically the same thing. Yeah, the Pac-12 has been really down for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever. But it's trending up now. There are some good teams and some good coaches in the Pac-12 now. My question about Utah is this. Is Utah winning the Pac-12 the last 2 years, competing for the Pac-12 almost every year the past 5 or 6 years? Is that a product of Utah getting better over those years? Or is it more a product of the Pac-12 being terrible during that time? This is a legitimate question to ask. And I'm not trash talking Utah or Kyle Whittingham. I like Kyle Whittingham. Like I said, what he's able to do with the talent they have there is remarkable and unbelievable. But I am concerned. I am concerned, if I'm a Utah fan, when I look around the Pac-12 and I see teams like Oregon on the way up, Washington on the way up, Southern Cal obviously on the way up, Oregon State obviously on the way up. It concerns me if I'm a Utah fan, because these are all teams and programs and schools that have the ability to attract more talented players than Utah does. Now, they had that same ability last year and the year before and the year before and the year before, and Utah still manages to win, right? But that's kind of the point. Those teams were down. It was a down cycle in the Pac-12, and Utah was kind of the steadying force in the Pac-12. You could sort of rely on them to win they were a lot like Wisconsin, kind of. You knew they were going to win 8, 9, 10 plus games, probably weren't going to make the playoffs or win a national title. But because the Pac-12 was down, Utah found itself in contention for the Pac-12 almost every single year. I worry now that the Pac-12, at least in my opinion, is on the way back up when you look at teams like I just mentioned, Southern Cal, Oregon, Washington, Oregon State, UCLA. I wonder if Utah is going to be that team that sort of gets lost in the shuffle. I don't know that Utah has the ability to suddenly get more talented. Utah is a kind of a is what it is type of school when it comes to recruiting and talent, and they're lucky. They have a guy like a Kyle Whittingham who has, number one, stayed there as long as he has, and number two, proven to be a great coach and can develop players. But I wonder now that you've got teams like Southern Cal and Oregon, they're going to start recruiting in the top 10, top 15. If a program like Utah is going to be able to keep up with that. We're going to start to find that out, I think, this year. But I've got them at number 13. Number 12. A team with a new quarterback that desperately needed one. Because it's a position that's really held them back. Notre Dame, I've got at number 12. Consistently wins 10-plus games a year. That new coach there, Marcus Freeman, avoided disaster last season because the season did not start well. They lost to Ohio State. That was acceptable. It's actually a closer game than people thought. 21-10, I think the final score that ended up being. So people came away from that game going, man, is Notre Dame a lot better than we thought? Or is Ohio State not as good as we thought? Or turned out to be really neither. Because Notre Dame went on to get beat by teams like Marshall and Stanford early in the season. Ohio State rolled over everybody they played up until the Michigan game, of course. So it turned out Ohio State was a really, really good team. Notre Dame, at least in the beginning of the season, was not a very good team. But something clicked at Notre Dame at some point during the season last year, 4 or 5 weeks in, and they went on a run. They beat Clemson handily at home, and they go on to beat a red-hot South Carolina team in the bowl game, and that momentum continued into the offseason for Notre Dame. They go out to the transfer portal and get one of the best available quarterbacks, Sam Hartman, who all he did at Wake Forest was throw for 4,000 yards a year. I mean, he just lit up everybody he played, including that vaunted Clemson defense. Didn't Sam Hartman throw 7 touchdown passes against that Clemson defense? So a clear upgrade at the quarterback position for Notre Dame. I still feel like they're a couple of recruiting cycles away from competing for a national title. They need elite playmakers on the outside, defensively and offensively. They've got decent offensive lines all the time, a good running back here and there, good tight ends, even some good linebackers. They struggle to attract like real playmaking, game-breaking type athletes. They've struggled to get those people over the last few years. A lot of people thought that it was a Brian Kelly issue and that when he left, maybe Marcus Freeman would be able to sort of get him over the hump. Well, a year into the Marcus Freeman era, he's basically recruiting at the same level that Brian Kelly did. So we'll see going forward what that means for Notre Dame. But I've got them I've got them at number 12. They returned 12 starters. They did lose their offensive coordinator, which is a blessing in disguise because their offensive coordinator is absolute garbage. Tommy Rees. I remember watching Notre Dame videos the first month of the season, and Notre Dame fans were begging Marcus Freeman to fire this clown, Tommy Rees. Well, he didn't fire him, he kept him. But guess who came in to save the day? Our buddy Nick Lou Saban. Yeah, wow. Alabama's really fallen off a cliff. How many offensive coordinators turned that job down? 3, 4, whatever the number was? I know the guy from Washington turned it down. So did everyone else, Dan Mullen. Alabama goes out and hires Tommy Rees, the Notre Dame offensive coordinator. Good luck. I don't know that it matters who your offensive coordinator is, though, whenever you're trotting Jalen Mildew out there to play QB. But anyway, this is about Notre Dame. I got him at 12. Number 11, go get ready to get your type out here. But I really don't give a shit. You guys, this group of people here have been typing in the Uncle Lou comment section for 7 years. So another few years of typing ain't going to really make that big of a deal. But outside of my top 10, coming in at number 11, none other than the Tennessee Vols. I've got some legitimate questions about Tennessee. Look, yes, they had a great year last year. The second best team in the SEC. Had an opportunity to make the playoffs had they not dribbled down their own leg against South Carolina late in the year. They would have had a case to make for that 4 spot had they beat South Carolina. But they didn't. Not only did they lose, they got humiliated. But I've got some legitimate and serious question marks when it comes to Tennessee. We'll start with the obvious. They lose pretty much all of their best players offensively. Hendon Hooker, gone. Cedric Tillman, gone. Jalen Hyatt, gone. That's pretty much their offense last year. Now, yes, they run the ball. They actually run the ball a lot, and they're pretty good at it, too. So, maybe that will continue on into this year. But Joe Milton at quarterback, we'll see. I don't think there's any way possible he's better than Hendon Hooker. I don't see it. I don't think Joe Milton is going to put up better numbers and be a better quarterback in the Josh Heupel offense than Hendon Hooker was. I think best case scenario, if you're a Tennessee fan, is that he ends up being just as good as Hendon Hooker. He's not going to be better. Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman, gone. Do you have wide receivers that can replace the two of them? No, you don't. Now, I don't think that means Tennessee's offense is about to fall off the cliff. I don't think that. I think until all the defenses figure out what Georgia already knows, it's going to be hard for a lot of people to stop that Tennessee offense, which is a giant gimmick, right? All they do is line up as fast as they can and try to run a play before the defense is ready. If they're able to snap the ball while the opposing defense is still laying on the ground, then the offense works great. It goes right down the field and scores. When they're not able to do that, they can't even get a first down, which is what happens every time they play somebody like Georgia. But they're going to be really good again offensively, even though they lose those guys. Will they be as good as they were last year? We'll see. I don't think there's two receivers on that team as good as Hyatt and Tillman. Will I be proved wrong? We'll see. Now let's talk about the other side of the ball. Absolute garbage and doo-doo. Absolute garbage and doo-doo. A lot of people want Tim Banks fire, their defensive coordinator. Here's the issue. If you get rid of him, who are you going to get? No one wants the Tennessee defensive coordinator job. And here's why. It's impossible to put up good numbers. It's just impossible. Because of the offense that Tennessee runs, because of the quick strike, let's run 100 plays a game. Tennessee's offense is on the field for an average of like a minute and a half per drive, right? What does that mean? It means your defense is right back out on the field constantly all game long. So even if you have a pretty talented defense with pretty good coaching and a pretty good scheme, right? That defense is going to give up a lot of yards, a lot of points, a lot of time of possession over the course of a game and over the course of a season, which makes the defensive coordinator look bad. Now, Tennessee's defense is bad. There's no question. It is bad. And I think it's going to continue to be bad in 2023. I think Tennessee has the potential to be a top 10 team. That's why I've got them at number 11. Hell, you can make an argument for all of these teams to finish in the top 10 that we talked about so far, probably. And that includes Tennessee. Of course, they play Alabama on the road this year after beating them at home last year. They also play Georgia, but they get Georgia at home. They played Georgia in Athens last year to get them in Knoxville this year. Next to the last game of the regular season, I believe. Could be a huge game. They got to travel to Tuscaloosa, like I mentioned. And their crossover game from the SEC West is against Texas A&M, which, before you start laughing out loud, is a crapshoot. Why? Who knows? Look, if there's anybody that can look me in my face right now and tell me they know what Texas A&M is going to do in 2023, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Texas A&M could go 10-2. Texas A&M could go 3-9, or anywhere in between. They hired a new OC. I don't know how much Jimbo's going to actually let him do, but they've got a lot of talent there, and you got to play them. Well, you get them at home, I believe. But so we'll see. In addition to the rest of your SEC schedule that you play, which it should run through, really, with the exception of the Georgia game could be close. We'll see. But I've got Tennessee at number 11. Time for the top 10.